Hey everyone, this is Creative Jean. Today we're going to make a fingerless glove. This is a 64 slot cylinder and we're starting off with a 2x1 mock rib, which means you will start at your 3 o'clock with 2 needles and then skip a slot and then 2 needles, skip a slot, 2 needles, skip a slot, all the way around. Start hanging your bonnet, add some weight, and add your yarn. Making sure that all of your latches are open all the way around. Because the 64 slot actually can't divide evenly into a 2x1, we actually add 1 needle right there before the 3 o'clock, making it 3 in a row. Because you're hanging your bonnet on every other needle pretty far away, you're going to end up with those long bars. So go around twice and grab your hook tool and lift that bottom bar up over one of the needles. You can see some of them did latch, and the ones that didn't, we just go ahead and pull up. And then, of course, do as many rows of your waste yarn as you like. This is a wool yarn that I'm using here. We're going to put it there right at 3 o'clock, you can see, so right between those 2 needles. And of course, as I did, the tail of the waste yarn came out. So I'm just putting my hook in one of the loops down lower. Usually you would latch up, but for this, because it's waste yarn, I just grabbed the loop and just brought it up and put it right back on the needle. So you want to do your first row with fairly loose tension, and then as you go up from there, you can tighten it. So that means I have 3 on. Every time I hit that yellow line, that counts as 1 full row. So we're going to do a total of 40 rows. This is going to turn into our hung hem. Take the weight off. Find that little tail down in there that you started with. And because we started on that needle right beside the 3 o'clock, we're going to take that loop and we're going to put it on that. So basically it's the middle needle of those 3. And then pick up every single one of those and place it on the needle. Making sure that you don't pull up the waste yarn with it, or it won't come off very easy at the end. So just continue all the way until the needles are down inside. Now you have to move your carriage, but in order to do that, we're going to stick the tail up and in, hold down the glove onto the needles. At this point you don't have the weight in, so you need to use your fingers to hold that down. So all the other needles have now come up out of the cam levers at the bottom, and you can continue putting all of the little loops onto each needle. It's a little tedious here at the end of that because they get a little bit tighter as you've pulled them all through. And that last one just goes on the first needle in that set of 3, which is technically the last one. So right here at 3 o'clock down, you're going to put in some needles to make it a full stockinet instead of the mock rib. So I like 20 needles here in a 64 slot cylinder. It works out really well. So we're just adding needles in between. Now, this part actually helps with not having a hole right there. What you're essentially doing is grabbing the little section of yarn that is between the loops. Let me give you a better picture here. So you can see that we had just lifted all of those loops onto the needles. And right here between those 2 loops, we're pulling up the yarn. Now if you grab the yarn right here, it tightens the loops on the needles already because it is technically running right through there and going around. I found that this makes it so there's no holes right there at the thumb. Add your weight back on, of course. And you've gone halfway kind of around, so that counts as your first row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and at 14 you're going to stop at 6 o'clock. If you have one of these crescent tools, it's nice, but just raise your needles all the way until where you started the stockinet, where you added the needles. So you can see there's a gap on both sides, and then we're going to start working the thumb here. So back and forth, I usually go 4 times, and then these are these little weights. I put 2 in there, and then we continue going back and forth, and we're going to go up to 20 rows. All the while continually moving those up as we go. Now this part, you can just use those little knitting markers, but just for ease sake, I'm just going to use the yarn. Just some little clips of yarn. You pull 1 side through, and all you're doing is marking where that 20th row is. You don't have to do this, but it really makes it easy to get the glove lined up. So just pop those down. I like the yarn tails because they don't kind of fall up when you're doing, when you're popping it up for the thumb join. So I'm going to take my spring off here, just so we can pull up every third needle. So you're going to count 2 needles and then pull that third one up, 2 needles, pull the third one up. Essentially, we're going back to that mock rib again. Now you can just do a mock rib on here and leave it. And then pull your spring back in. And start knitting again, back and forth, holding down those needles that you took out so they don't get in the way. That's 2, 3, 4. Move up your springs. These are called heel springs. Oh no, sorry, these are not heel springs. Heel forks. So we're going up 10 rows from where you put the markers in. So the reason I left the needles in there is so that I can mark that 10th loop down. You can just count them down, but put your hook in down through the bottom and then go in and latch those all up. Now, after I did this, I realized that the bar of the mock rib is just not enough slack. So if I were to do it again, I would, before I did the 10 rows, move my tension really loose so that I had a ton of slack in here. But for this purpose, it actually did work out. So all we're doing is, instead of a mock rib, which is fairly loose and I want it tight around my thumb, we are doing a 2x1 full rib. So you bring up your 10 stitches on the purl side and then put a needle back in and pop your stitch on. Do it to all of them. So after you have them all done, now you're going to cast off. So that's just basically like a crochet. So you go through the stitch that's on the needle and wrap your thread around that latch hook and bring all of the thread through, forming another loop. It's kind of like just crocheting off the edge. So this is where I realized I probably would have wanted to do a looser tension right here on just those 10 stitches because it was so tight I kept dropping the loop off. So I came up on the other side of the needle. Let's try and get a better picture for you. So up and in through, past the latch hook, and grab the new yarn. If your latch hook is on the other side of the yarn, it's going to shut on you. So you have to wait to put that loop past the latch hook right there until you get it on to your hook. This would have been much easier with a longer tension. Make sure that you're not splitting that yarn. Takes a couple tries sometimes. There you go. So you're going to pull and make this loop a little bit bigger. And cut that off, but first remove the heel spring or the string goes flying back. So now don't pull it through yet. Just put the tail down in there and keep that little loop on your finger. Pull all the stitches off the needle. Usually people put a knot here, but I didn't want a knot. I don't want extra bulk there. So we're just going to go through that first stitch, and then this is where we're going to pull that string all the way through both of those. You want to leave a long tail here because in a few seconds I'm going to knit up that whole thumb. I hate having to put in all of the tail ends at the end of a project. I just want to pull it off and be done. So I always like to try and do all of my stitching at the beginning. So you're going to pull up these little ties. It pulls out that stitch, and you're going to put both of them in the middle. Now because there was 20 stitches, you can count over 9 and put it on the 10th, and then the other one right beside it. So now we're actually going to stitch up the thumb right now while it's in the machine. We've flipped the thumb inside out so that that is on the inside, and we go back and forth. Little tedious as it gets stuck on the needle sometimes, but I still like this better than stitching all of them up at the end. It doesn't take very long, there's only 10 stitches there. I'm just going through the 2 loops on both sides. If you only went through the one, it would give you a little bit more room to move, but I find the 2 stitches make it nice and sturdy. And then when we get to that little part, you're going to put an extra loop there at the bottom. Pop the tail right down on the bottom there. Now you're going to grab your hook tool, pull out your little markers, you don't need them anymore. And you're going to bring up each of those side stitches. So there's 10 needles here, and we did 20 rows, which means it's going to be every other row that you're going to put up. And what I've noticed is there's a little bump, and then there's kind of a line. So I'll grab the line and put it on, skipping the bump. Works really well. So this last stitch, I actually pull and find the one that is connected to that first needle by 3 o'clock, and I actually stick that one on as well. So there's 2 stitches on that last needle, an extra one there to close that gap. So I'll just show you. So you can tell that that's connected to that needle. You roll up and find it and pop it on there too. So it's just a double wrap, just like you'd normally do on a heel or a toe. Now I'm going to put one of those little heel forks all the way up through the thumb, fold it down, and put some weight on it. Okay, bring up all the needles because you don't want to knit them yet. We're going to bring the carriage all the way around, but then stop at 6 o'clock and bring up the needles you now want to start working, or down, I mean, sorry. Put them back into work, opening up all the latches. Put your yarn in. Make sure the tail is right there at that first needle by 3 o'clock, the first of the 3. Go halfway around and then bring your other needles into work. Now I found that if you keep them up slightly, the latches don't want to close and you won't have any dropped ones. But if you push them down all the way, the latches kind of start to push up. Now right here, again, because I don't like sewing in tails, I'm going to pull that, tighten it, and stick it in, and I'm actually going to knit with it. Sorry about my hand being in the way. And we're only going to knit to there because I don't want 3 tails of yarn going in. So I'm going to cut that one off, I'm going to tighten it, and I'm going to put that new tail in. And voila! No knitting in tails. No stitching up the thumb afterwards. You're just done. So we're going to do 10 rows. If you want your glove to be longer, I suggest adding rows right here. Oh, I guess I'm doing 20, sorry. Now we're going to turn it back to the mock rib right there on the thumb area. So count over 2 needles, pull that 3rd one out and place it on the needle beside it. It doesn't matter which way you want to go. You can go left or right. I find that not doing the mock rib up the thumb the whole way actually gives you a lot more stability in that area and protection. Now we want to stick a marker in here because we're going to be using this first row that we did as the hung hem row for the upper part of the glove. So just add a marker there to that first needle. That'll be the first one that you are bringing up to hang. It is a little bit difficult because you can't see which one to hang, but it works. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We're going to go all the way up to 45 on this one. And you're going to stop on that 6 o'clock again. Remove all your weights. and pull up that marker that you put in. So there it is there. So that's that first stitch. And make note on which needle you put it on. If you did it on the first of the 3, then that's the one you're going to start on. Now follow that line of string down to the next area. You're going to pick up the loop that's below the line. And go all the way around. Now we actually don't want to knit these off. This is the end of our glove, and so I'm going to pull all these up out of work. If you move it forward to finish knitting them, make sure you're pushing down because there is no weight on this. Now here, as I get to the end, I'll show you what I mean by that bar. So there's the bar that's coming out of the loop on the needle. The stitch you want to put on is the one right below that bar. So there's the bar, there's the stitch. There's the bar, and there's the stitch. Now, pull all those ones up because you want that cam to be able to move freely around there without knitting anything. So all of your needles are all out of work. We're going to take the yarn out, wrap it around once, and then give yourself a really good amount after that. Now, I haven't seen anybody else do this. I just kind of figured it out on my own. And to me, it works really well, but you can choose for yourself what you want to do. A lot of people will pull it off on waste yarn and then they will knit these two together. But I thought, well, if it's already stretched this way, why can't we just take the thread, run it through all of them, and it'll just hold them and it'll be the right tension because it's as big as the machine is right now. So all I'm doing is going through from the bottom to the top, both stitches. You just have to make sure that as you're doing this, that you get both stitches. Now that's why I moved all the needles into non-work, because I need to be able to move the cam out of my way while I'm doing this. So here's a close-up side view of what I mean by catching both stitches. So we go up from the bottom and up through the top stitch there. So you're catching both of them in one go. Make sure if you need to push the other yarn or the loop below out of the way so you're only getting the tip of those two loops. I tilt the needles forward and it really helps stretch out the loop so that I can see properly. And here you see I'm getting back to the 3 o'clock. There's that first needle in the set of 3, and on the second needle in is usually where I do, or the third needle is usually where I do my knot to end this tail. So just put it in, go back through, pull it down, tighten it up, and then I just bring it down through that inside of that mock rib, the two little folded layers there, and clip it. So here you go. Now you get to pull it off the machine. Lower your needles. Go slow because your latches will hit if they're open. And there's the glove. No tails to weave in. Now, so that stitching line is going to be loose, right? Because it was just a straight line. But as you pull, that stitch line is now going to actually work like a zigzag between those two. And it works perfectly. Pull a little bit so the tail hides back into that mock rib. And look at that. All completely finished. You've already done your stitching on your thumb. Didn't take long. There's where the holes would be, but because we added that extra little line up there, covers it in. So all you have to do now is just cut off the end. Of your waste yarn. Now obviously if you're making a pair of gloves, which I already had the other one of these made already, you would put waste yarn on after you did the stitching all the way around. So right after that you would hide your thread in there, and then you would just bring your needles down and then add your waste yarn again, and then start over. On the next glove you would cut the waste yarn off of that one. That one's done, and then unravel the waste yarn all the way down to that first glove you made, and it would just come off like normal. I was lazy here and just kept cutting. That's why there's these long tails. A lot of times you can just weave up and down the little legs and it doesn't put as many little guys in here, but it's fine. They just come off. There you go. A finished glove. See, there's where the join is. Where you go from the mock rib up into just the regular stockinet. I like these. Thanks for watching.